And I know on our side, it's certainly highly busy around getting grants out the door, but we really think this is going to be a great conversation with the team leading the Breathe With Me revolution. Humanity United is excited to be co-hosting this session with Alliance for Peacebuilding and the Breathe With Me revolution. My name is Vijay Simhan. I'm on the Racial Justice and Equity and the Labor and Human Trafficking team at Humanity United. If you would indulge me for a second, I'll give you a blurb about HU and then we'll just keep it moving. But Humanity United is a foundation that's dedicated to cultivating conditions for enduring peace and freedom. HU, we do that by supporting and building efforts that seek to transform systems that contribute to human exploitation and violent conflict. HU was founded by the Omidyar Group, which is a collection of independent organizations and initiatives that pursue different ways to improve the lives of people and societies. Related to that, in 2020, HU launched an exploratory body of work on racial justice and equity. And one of our partners in that work is the Breathe With Me Revolution. And just in a second, I'll share a link in the chat that provides people with a little bit more background on HU's racial justice and equity work. And I would encourage you all, if you have not seen it, to check it out when you have a moment. But I won't spend any more time speaking, mostly so you can hear from the partners that we're working with. Before I do that, let me do a little bit of that virtual housekeeping that we always have to do. First, you probably saw that there's a note about recording this call. As Maria and myself, others have said, there's a number of funders that expressed interest in joining, but we're not able to because of timing and schedules. And so we want to be able to share this with them. Secondly, we're all kind of familiar with virtual meetings at this point, but we'd be, of course, excited to see faces, but we also want people to do what's most comfortable for them. So certainly no obligation on that front. And we also recognize that some people are working from home, so there might be some unexpected cameos, and that's not a problem at all. Lastly, we would ask, even with a small group like this, that if you're not speaking, that you mute yourself. There will be time for questions, and you can always use the chat feature to pose questions as we go along, or use the raise hand function, which I believe you will find under the reactions button across the bottom there. And if you feel inclined, please introduce yourself in the chat as well. So with that, let me introduce Liz Hume, who's going to be providing some opening thoughts. For the uninitiated, Liz is a conflict expert and has more than 2 decades of experience working on senior leadership positions in bilateral and multilateral institutions and NGOs. She has extensive experience in policy and advocacy, overseeing peacebuilding programs around the world. Currently, she's the acting president and CEO of Alliance for Peacebuilding, which is coincidentally a key partner for HU and HU's peacebuilding portfolio. So Liz, welcome. Thank you for joining, and please, it's all yours.
Thank you so much. And it's such a pleasure to be here today. I want to start off by saying, going back into 2015, Melanie Greenberg, who was our CEO at the time and is now at HU, she and I were talking about the fact of how hypocritical it was that peacebuilding organizations were working all over the world globally. The Alliance for Peacebuilding is a membership-based network of over 150 partners working in 181 countries globally. The irony was that right in our own backyard, we were seeing incredible conflict dynamics, instability, violent extremism, increasing toxic polarization right in our own backyard. And it was at that time that AFP really started focusing in on the conflict dynamics in the United States. We know what they are. The Alliance for Peacebuilding in the last 5 months has done an incredible sessions every Wednesday with some of the key leaders, understanding what's happening in the United States, what's driving this conflict, where the resiliencies are, where the trends and the triggers are. And we were, it was our pleasure to host the people here today, Breathe With Me, that really dug in deep on the social justice issues. Now it's part of a system. It's not one thing is going to solve the conflict and the increasing conflict dynamics in the United States, but the social justice issues are a key part of what is driving conflict in the United States and also triggering, as we have seen with police unjustified killings, some of the toughest violence that we've seen in the United States. So what I always say, and people have heard me say this many, many times, we have to address the increasing conflict and extremism in the United States. But to do that, programs have to be resourced. And so this group of people and this program is a really key element into not only just raising awareness, building empathy, and building education on what is driving conflict in the United States. So I look forward to hearing the session, and I encourage everybody to really, focus in on it and think about how we can all support it. Thank you.
Thanks, Liz, and we appreciate you jumping in and doing that from the comforts of your car too, no less. So much appreciation for that. Right now, what I might do is I might pass it to my colleague Betel, who's going to play a short 3-minute video that's going to do a little bit more of that stage setting for you all. So Betel, take it away.
I'm not hearing any sound.
In your girlfriend's car with a child. In 2016, we created 23 ways you could be killed by being Black in America. Failing to signal a lane change. Riding in your girlfriend's car with a child in the back.
Running to the bathroom in your own apartment.
Selling cigarettes outside of a corner store. I can't believe I'm back 4 years later with 17 more ways you can be killed.
Leaving a party, Jordan Edwards.
Sleeping in your home, Dominique Clayton.
Sitting in a wheelchair, Jeremy McDonald.
Riding your bike, Ronnell Foster.
Suffering from a mental illness, Walter Wallace Jr.
Failing to dim your lights, Javier Amber.
Walking down the street, Elijah McClain.
At home relaxing, Botham John.
At your window, Tatiana Jefferson.
Standing in our grandmother's backyard, Stephon Clark.
Jogging, Ahmaud Aubrey. Sleeping in your car, Rayshard Brooks.
Standing by your car, Terrence Crutcher.
Driving your car, Kane Rogers.
Suffering from mental illness, Daniel Prude.
Accused of using a fake 20, George Floyd. Sleeping in your bed, Breonna Taylor.
Breathe with me.
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 Breathe with me. Breathe with me.
Thank you, Vital. I mean, I think the words of Liz and the video sort of speak for itself. So let me pass it to our moderator for today, my colleague and my friend, Maria Kasumbi, who's the Senior Advisor for Policy and Government Relations here at Humanity United and also a member of the Racial Justice and Equity team. Maria, it's all yours.
Thanks, Vijay, and thanks, Patel, for showing that very powerful video with a very powerful message. It's my honor, and I'm very humbled to be able to facilitate this conversation with very dynamic leaders from the Breathe With Me team who will be sharing with us their perspectives today. Allow me to be able to first say a little bit about them, their profiles and their resumes, so that you can be able to hear how great and dynamic they are in leading this very powerful movement that is very much needed today. I will start with Dr. Charles Chavez, the Assistant Professor of Conflict Resolution and History and Director of African and African American Studies at George Mason University. He's also the Breathe With Me Revolution ARC Advisor. In addition, we have also Dr. Marcus Anthony Hunter of Scott War Endowed Chair in the Division of Social Sciences, Professor of Sociology, Inaugural Chair of the Department of African American Studies at UCLA, but also Breathe With Me Revolution Transformation Architect. We also have Dr. Paul Zeitz, founder of Builder Movement 2022, Political and Policy Advocacy with Breathe With Me Revolution. We also have Prophet, who is a social impact strategist and music manager, co-founder and co-chair of the Black Music Action Coalition, a co-founder also of Breathe With Me Revolution. We also have Anne Haggart, social impact executive, co-founder, founder mom, and a co-founder with Breathe With Me Revolution. Thank you so much for being with us. I know we're just a small number, but they always say one by one makes a bundle, and we will be able to create some change and create some impact and move people towards this very passionate cause. So this format is really supposed to be conversation, and then we will be able to have some questions and answer from the audience in the chat. So this session, we're going to first have one set of questions where you all will be able to answer, and then hopefully we'll be having some questions and answers from the audience, and Betel, my colleague, will be able to send these questions and we'll be able to answer them, and then we'll go to the next session. So my first question is to you, Dr. Marcus. How can truth and healing dismantle the systemic racism that has continually interfered with and injured Black lives, Black communities, Black entrepreneur endeavors, and Black businesses?
Yeah, thank you so much, Maria, for that question. I want to thank Vijay and all your colleagues for having us here. I really, really, truly have deep gratitude for this space and opportunity to share our message. And also thank you to Humanity United for being courageous and wonderful in your collaboration with us. To answer your question, I've been writing my book, Radical Reparations, which will be out next year. And as I've been writing it, part of it has been reminding me that America is a story. America is a story that we tell ourselves, that we tell the world, that we tell our children, that we tell those who come after us about those who came before us. And unfortunately, for one reason or another, there are edits made of that story where wholesale certain parts have been eliminated. For whatever reason it might be to protect the idea of America for some. But I think the other thing that happens is that those who come into the story later, let's say in the 20th century, sort of think, well, I wasn't here when all of that stuff was happening. So what do I have to do with that? And what I say in response is, you are benefiting from the story that has already commenced when you arrived. And we do ourselves a great disservice if we don't just nail that story down. Fortunately, America is still a very young nation. So we don't have thousands of years that we have to call and collect and get back. In fact, some of the folks who were a part of these eras that we are too afraid to talk about are still alive. Shout out to Tulsa, Oklahoma. That I think it behooves us in this moment to actually take the opportunity that has been presented to us to not only nail down the truth, but to share it, to embrace it, and to lean into it so that we can help not only prevent it from happening again, but to mitigate the future harms and ultimately affirm that Black people's lives do matter, that Black people's contributions have been American contributions. There would be no America if there were no Black people. So I think it's about getting to the meat and potatoes of the whole thing.
Thank you. The other question, which is very nice, bringing us to the next one, is to Dr. Charles. So we're hearing many recommendations around a U.S. Truth, Racial Healing, and Transformation Commission. Can you break down why these recommendations are critical for equity and justice in the long run?
Well, I want to first off start off by saying thank you to you, Maria, and as well as the team at Humanity United. Excuse me, I am a little hoarse, yelling at my son's soccer game over the weekend. You know, yes, I have it nearby. But one of the things I wanted to kind of talk about, similar to Marcus, you know, talking about his research, I really want to talk about my specific practice-oriented experience. Not only do I serve as assistant professor at Mason, but I also serve as vice chair for the Maryland Lynching Truth and Reconciliation Commission. And this is the first commission in the United States, dedicated, the first truth commission dedicated to investigating and remedying racial terror lynchings. Last week, we actually hosted our first public hearing in Allegheny County, Maryland. And a number of the recommendations around establishing a U.S. Truth Commission, you know, oftentimes the debate is, should it be national or should it be something that is more regional? We at Breathe With Me and our team, we believe that this should be a movement of movements. And the commission that we're proposing should be made up of local, state, and national. But at the end of the day, it should be driven by local advocates and leaders who have been fighting for justice and fighting for equity before there was any mention of a commission or any mention of this national racial reckoning. They have been suffering, and these communities have been suffering with these racial injustices silently before the TVs, the video cameras have ever arrived, before it was on the global stage. And in working directly with these local leaders and activists, I am more convinced now than ever that we have to take a bottom-up approach and let the local leaders and local groups lead the national call and this national movement. And with Breathe With Me, we've developed an amazing framework and strategy for bringing together those local leaders and connecting them with legislative leaders and other political leaders to establish a national commission that will truly address the systemic issues that Marcus so eloquently highlighted.
Mm-hmm. Thank you. And sorry about the throat. We're also dying with the cough. So the next one is Dr. Paul, building on what Dr. Charles has a bit touched on the linkage between Breathe With Me and the U.S. Truth, Healing, and Transformation Commission. Can you build that on more? I know you wanted to share your screen. Can you build to share with the rest of us? All of us are all wondering, how are they strongly linked? We've seen it in the video. Yeah. What's the connection?
Great. Thank you so much, Maria, Humanity United, and all of you. It's really an honor to be here. And my mentors, Professor Marcus and Professor Chavis. As a white man, I want to just say, like, it's an honor to be in solidarity. And as we build this multiracial movement that is aiming at dismantling the fundamental lie that there's a hierarchy of human value based on skin color. That's actually what we're trying to do here. And that is the kind of genesis of systemic racism that is in every aspect of our society. So as a committed anti-racist, I really am working hard to live that intention. And Marcus and Charles are my favorite mentors. George Floyd was murdered. My first grandson, a biracial grandson, was born on May 29th. And then Lee Blake called me, one of the founders of Breathe With Me, and said, we got to do it now. She had worked under the Obama era to try to get Obama to do a truth commission. I was part of that. I was in the State Department, so I was like a behind the scenes guy. So Lee said, now's the time, you know, and she came up and with a whole constellation of bringing Prophet, Annie, all these other people into it. That was the birthing of Breathe With Me Revolution during that June of 2020. At the same time, Marcus had been working with Gail Christopher, the the visionary who created the TRHT framework, Truth, Racial Healing, and Transformation. They had been called in by Congresswoman Barbara Lee to draft a resolution, like actually 2 years before June 2020. So whatever happened, Barbara Lee decided that was the time to release the resolution that Marcus and Gail had helped her craft. And they did it in a brilliant way. They did it with the support of the Asian American Caucus, the Hispanic Caucus, the Progressive Caucus, the Indigenous and Native American Caucus, and they established the political movement that we're part of now. And it's an expanding movement. And so they created it as a multiracial movement. She introduced this resolution into the House. Senator Kamala Harris had agreed to introduce it into the Senate. And then when she was selected as vice president, she decided to pass the baton over to Senator Cory Booker. He introduced it in the Senate in the 116th Congress. And we built a movement around those two resolutions on the Hill. We started building the movement in that way during the 116th Congress. Then the 117th Congress started in January of this year. We survived the election, which was like a big question mark, what was going to happen there. Then January 6th happened and all that. And so we then, actually in October, when we sensed that Biden and Harris would win, we decided to also build up an advocacy effort targeting the executive branch. So we added a second wheel to our movement. We had congressional mobilization, and we added, targeting the incoming administration. We have a memo and documents that we sent to them. I'm happy to share that. And then in January, I think, or early February it was, Marcus and several of us worked intensively on a provisional executive order. We want to be in the queue. They're rolling out all these executive orders. We want to be in the queue. So I think it's really good. I'm actually operating as if it's happening under that executive order. Our movement has been growing. We have over 300 organizations plus another 50 celebrity and faith leaders that are supporting this call for a U.S. Federal Truth Commission. Through the leadership of Professor Chavis, he was able to generate a letter from Governor Larry Hogan directed to President Biden calling on him to do this. He is the only Republican anywhere that has said that in writing. So that was like a momentous breakthrough. Thank you. Thanks, Charles. And that's because he's in that role as vice chair of the Maryland Truth Commission. And I do want to share my screen just for a minute. I'm sorry if I'm going overtime here, but Marcus and I have been working with Princeton University, New England School of Law, and our 300 coalition members to create a kind of movement map. And so this is what, if you ask people, what is the Truth, Racial Healing, and Transformation movement, they have no idea. They never heard of it. And so part of our job in building a movement is to excavate it and reveal it. And this is a prototype. This is not done. This is just a private showing of it. So we're just getting this going. But this is our initial mapping of organizations. The 300 organizations aren't on there yet. So we're talking about like the League of Women Voters, and how many chapters do they have, Marcus? Like 1,200 chapters. We have Sojourners and the faith movement. They've mobilized 50 faith leaders, and they're rolling out a massive faith movement that's not on here yet on the map. We have the American Constitution Society. They're mobilizing law students across the country to develop resolutions in support of a truth commission. I mean, I could go on and on, but I'll stop with those, So we're building a broad-based, cross-partisan movement with faith, with people, multiracial, and across all these sectors. And this is the thing that I think is the most interesting, is that already popping up at the bottom-up level is the birthing of truth, racial healing, and transformation commissions, task forces. They might be called reparations task forces. They're at the state level and they're at the city and local level. This is an initial mapping. Did anyone, I'm sure no one had seen that that is all already happening right now. So this is the beginning of trying to map that out and characterizing it and so forth. And then of course, we're mapping what's happening legislatively. This is an initial mapping of the members of Congress that support the study of reparations as a possible source of transformation. Not surprisingly, it's in the coast and in some of the central parts of the states in the South. So, I mean, again, I want to stop. This is just being done by volunteers. This is just a shoestring kind of initial effort to be able to show you all what's actually happening. And we've been working on our strategy, and I'll share my view of our political strategy right now, which links to what we're doing. First of all, Humanity United is investing in Breathe With Me to establish a real-world demonstration of what we're talking about here. So Charles and Ann and others are leading an effort to work with the city of Salisbury, Maryland, to create a local Truth, Racial Healing, and Transformation TRHT commission and a community archive, a community arch that Marcus will talk more about. Then that process will lead to policy transformation ideas that will be fed into the Maryland State Commission that Charles is the vice chair of, and they've formally adopted the TRHT framework as how they're going to operate it. Then we have a state model. And now there's already talk about Montgomery County and maybe Annapolis and other parts of Maryland doing local commissions and then feeding into the Maryland State Commission. So that's the model that we want to replicate across the country. Charles is already working on it in the federal capital area, including Washington, D.C. and Virginia. Marcus is doing California and many other places. So we have seeds that we're planting to prepare for this. We're also activating the federal government. We've identified the Community Relations Service, which is America's Peacekeepers. I hope you've all read this book by Bertram Levine and Graham Lum. It tells you the history of the Community Relations Service. They're a unit within the Department of Justice. They're actively engaging with us. They're going to be working with Charles in Maryland at the state and local level. They're expanding now under the Biden-Harris administration. They have 22 new positions to fill. They have regional offices across the country. We are going into operational mode now, right? We have to convince the Biden-Harris administration that this is a big win for them and that we have the operational modalities already up and running. So I'll just end by the political strategy that I'm advocating for, that is a work in process, is that we continue advocating for congressional resolutions. And additionally to that, we add on a major campaign from now until January 16th, 2023, which is Martin Luther King Day, after the midterms, and in the beginning of the third year of the Biden-Harris administration. And we do everything humanly possible to build a movement and create the enabling environment and create the win-win opportunity for our country that he, on that day, will sign this executive order and the U.S. Truth, Racial Healing, and Transformation Commission will actually be launched. So that we're in a historic moment of opportunity and possibility, and we're trying to focus all the energy for 16 Jan 2023, or January 16th, 2023, Martin Luther King Day. Can you imagine that possibility of what will be happening on that day? And the Trumpian phenomena, all of that, I won't say more about it, is the evolutionary force that is creating the possibility that we can actually achieve this breakthrough for fulfilling on the American idea, as Marcus said. So, I mean, it's like the negativity, the collapse of democracy, the climate emergency, the collapse of the economy, all these things are the evolutionary opportunity for us to win on this. So I just want to stop there and thank you. Over to you, Maria.
No, thank you, Paul. That's been very precise and a lot of the information for folks to be able to understand the connection between Breathe With Me and the movement that is happening. Very, very massive and very exciting to see how it's growing, and really gives us this opportunity for us not to we have to take it, grab it, and make sure that change happens. So the next question which I have for Prophet, which is very much with the language that you had used, Paul, around is, how can we in this room, especially as philanthropy, be in solidarity with leaders like you in leading this movement of mobilizing reparative justice for local communities?
First of all, I want to say thank you, Maria, and thank you, Humanity United, Dr. Paul, Brother Charles, Dr. Marcus, and thank you guys for the work that you do. I also want to thank Lee Blake, who's not with us, who is the co-founder and kind of like the heartbeat, if you will, behind the Breathe With Me revolution. And if I can kind of tap a little bit into Paul's question as well about that direct connection with 17 Ways in the Truth Commission, one of the things that Lee Blake has been probably one of the most successful activists in the last 30 years, in the ability to get artists and the celebrity community to do more than public-facing gestures, to actually roll up their sleeves and do things that leads to systemic change. So when we decided to tackle this issue of racial justice, we used that same format. So we were able to bring artists together for the first time to call for the Biden-Harris administration in their first 100 days to launch this commission. And it went wide. The video received hundreds of millions of views, and we've met with the White House, and we've met with various leaders in that space as a result of that sort of urgency that the artist celebrity community kind of created around this issue. It also helped educate the public that this issue exists, and that if we're really serious about Black lives, and if we're really serious about economic justice and closing the economic wealth gap and dealing with the systemic issues of racism in this country, then we have to have a truth commission. We have to move to a place where you actually reveal and expose exactly what has happened to Black America. And then once we get that evidence, we can actually move to a place of healing. The idea that we can skip that step and move to a reparations, or skip that step and move to these sort of optics and these sort of performative gestures of solidarity, if we're truly serious about this issue, then we have to dig it up, expose it, deal with it in a very real, honest, non-emotional way, and then move past it as a nation. And the celebrity artist community, and particularly after the uprising of last summer, have made a very serious commitment to this issue, and to use their platforms in connection with Breathe With Me to really bring this issue to the forefront of not just the political structure, but to the American people, which ultimately will be the change agents here. The government will respond if the people are applying that pressure. So part of what makes the arts powerful is it takes it out of the power of the government and allows us as individuals to create this sort of experience where folks can really get the information that they need without the sort of tainted, skewed versions of it that we've been giving. And also, one of the best ways that philanthropy can work with with organizations like ours is first understand the idea that we have to kind of get out this sort of pharmaceutical approach to charity and philanthropy. This idea that we have to keep it going, right? There's no end. When do we have an end to it? When do you actually achieve the things that you are trying to do? A lot of the reasons why we haven't achieved it so far is because the bureaucracy that get in between philanthropy in the actual people who need the help. And the money get caught up in the pipeline of overhead, office expenses, and all these other things that do not hit the veins of the people. So the first thing we can do is kind of have a paradigm shift of what it is to help people in this country. Black folks need access, not charity. So we have to have this sort of reimagining of what this country is with a level playing field. And then the second thing you can do is support Breathe With Me, because we believe that through our research experience, we have developed direct impact solutions that will really bring about the change that our ancestors dreamt about, that our children can actually experience. So, that's my answer in short.
No, thank you so much, Prophet. You know, when you were talking, I was even clapping. I wish you could see me clapping and like, yes, we need to speak the truth. We need to talk about what is happening, the injustices that happen before we start to move to the next level of healing and reconciliation. So bring us to the next question to Anne. The conversations we have around truth are really polarized and fractured. You've seen what has happened with the 1619. We're talking about the truth. This is about the truth that happened. So how do we engage everyone in a conversation on America's truth so as we can move towards racial healing?
Echoing what everyone has said, we really appreciate everyone's time today. Thank you so much for coming. We've been hard at work on this, and we're just thrilled to be able to share what we're up to with all of you. The truth, as we know, is terrifying to people. And as we saw January 6th, people are willing to, based on a lie, lay down their lives. I mean, this country there is an enormous amount of work to do that we all acknowledge and know. The question is, how do you do it? And how do you get to the people that aren't on this call, that would never be on this call, because they are absolutely determined that America is not a racist country. So obviously we see the truth as the fuel that eventually leads us to be able to use data, stories, records, all of those types of things to take away the subjectivity to that, to move this to a place of inarguable truth. Whether you believe it or not, let's look at maternal mortality. Let's look at poverty. Let's look at generational wealth. Let's look at mass incarceration. So you can call it what you want, but when that is documented and in a centralized and clear place and available for media and available for education, it starts to move people. I think about when I graduated with a degree in journalism with an emphasis in political science. There are certainly inaccuracies that were part of our curriculum then, and it was a little while ago. There was so much that we didn't learn. There was so much omitted from the national history of this country, which one could argue is almost more destructive. Like, it is more destructive to have not understood redlining, to have not understood the stolen generational wealth, to not understood what went on between 1865 and today, because it's presented as, slavery ended, there were some adjustments in the 60s, and we're all good, right? And there's so much in between all of that, that we're working to use the work on the truth commissions to inform, and Marcus can get into this, but to really model this on other groups and other movements that have used the truth in ways that make it accessible to people. So early on, we spoke to the Shoah Foundation. They've done an incredible job in taking, a topic where people are also very comfortable saying the Holocaust did not exist, right? Which is like, it's sort of beyond comprehension. To use the stories, they have 13 patents in how they've documented those stories, but also they've been able to take the truth and inform education and inform media, and to have that going on in an ongoing capacity, which this 400+ years deserves. There's no turning back. We don't have a choice. We have to do this. So we're sort of mobilized around that. We're putting everything into that. And we do see that work creates the narrative change that's required. We'll come at it from that way, which is academic and systemic and all of that. And then we'll get my 15-year-old to watch when we do the 17 ways and offsets in it, right? So we're going to come at it from all sides to hopefully get everybody, as many people as possible, moving with us, essentially.
Thank you so much, Anne. Thank you. Power to you. I see, Prophet. Yeah. Yeah, so we have a couple of questions. Thank you, Akwasi. Akwasi, my colleague and senior fellow at Humanity United, has 2 questions for the panel. Are there any pertinent lessons from outside the US that you can adaptively draw on to inform your organizing? And then the second question is, how does one address the secondary conflicts and contradictions within traumatized and oppressed communities in the US? So my dear great panelists, who would like to take Akwasi's questions?
I'll take the first one if you don't mind.
Yes, Dr. Charles.
Great, great. So the first, thank you so much for your question. The first thing I thought about as a historian specifically focuses on white supremacy in the African diaspora. The first 2 examples that come to mind when we think about the establishment of a U.S. Truth Commission really are obviously the South Africa TRC, the work that was done there, but then also dealing with racial democracy in Brazil. And a number of scholars have highlighted the ways in which we have to look at this issue, not so much geographically, but really as an issue rooted in confronting and understanding the realities of and the practice of white supremacy. So if we are looking at this from a systemic perspective, I think those 2 examples, for me at least, really provide the best example of the situation that America or the US finds itself in, being so dependent on a system, to Paul's earlier point, that is rooted in devaluing and dehumanizing Black lives, right? If we're trying to dismantle a system, then we need to provide and promote, develop remedies that confront that system and dismantle that system, similar to the ways in which white supremacy manifests itself in other societies. It's pretty much similar when you think about the lived experience of Black peoples throughout the diaspora. That would be the quick answer for you, for me. But I'd love to hear from Professor Marcus or others as well.
Yeah, thank you for the question. I would offer a couple of things. I think the first thing is that we have to really get back to understanding that this all happens because of a combination of colonization and enslavement. And oftentimes we do ourselves a disservice when we think about slavery as only something that Europe did. There's also an Arab slave trade that is happening. So Black Africans are being taken east and west. And they're being traveled with also a mindset that's being scattered ahead of their arrival. And that is, when you see a Black person, please don't think they are also human. Please just understand them as property. Please just understand them as free laborers. Please just understand that they are not like you. So part of why the truth is important is because there's a Ghanaian proverb I use a lot in these spaces, and that is, one lie can destroy 1,000 truths. One lie about Black people not being human has destroyed all the 1,000 facts about Black life. That Black people cry, they love, they marry, they have children, they have families, they have dreams that they deserve to have and to realize. That one lie that we are not human has traveled everywhere, and been believed, and been the platform and premise upon which we have been dehumanized. Now, to the other point about the internal drama, the intra-group dynamics, I think that the Rwanda experience is a great example. That here you have an all-Black nation that had its own drama and trauma and suffering and found a way to find peace in that. Ironically enough, America helped pay for it. So what is very curious about America is we're willing to help pay for Nuremberg trials. We're willing to insert, crimes against humanity are the worst things ever. We're willing to help Rwanda pay for their truth ceremonies. We're down there with Nelson Mandela, helping them rewrite their constitution, and we still can't get the ERA passed as an amendment. So part of what's happening here is about making America accountable for what it makes other people do and what they pay other people for. It's time we spend money on our own truth, spend money on healing ourselves, as opposed to thinking about the racial healing as something that's outside, that's elsewhere. That's going on over there in Peru. Over in Brazil, they need that support. It's time that we actually double down, and this is what James Baldwin said, it's time for us to pay our dues. It's due time, and Black people are due. In fact, they're overdue. And I think if we are thinking about ways to support what we're doing, it's really about thinking about it being our responsibility to look inwards, to figure out how we harmed each other, thinking about ourselves as the source of the harm and repairing that harm as being a premise for the future we all deserve, the future we all need, where America no longer has this mindset that what is wrong with humanity is outside of its borders, but instead resides inside of it. And what Breathe With Me has been doing is refocusing those energies on where the problem resides in America, upending this idea of human hierarchy, upending this idea of systemic racism, upending this idea that Black people are different in their humanity, that they don't deserve or entitled to the same level of access, and getting to that. And I think once you get to that, you start to see the intergroup stuff fall away because people realize there is enough for everybody. There is enough to go around. We've been brought up in a kind of imagination of scarcity, really, honestly. And when you're around, and I grew up in a Black church where I was taught abundance, okay? So there doesn't have to be this scarcity. We don't have to be thinking to ourselves, oh, Black people get reparations, that means nobody's getting anything. We should be thinking that people being healed and repaired for damage done to them is a net benefit for everybody, period.
Thank you. I love Dr. Marcus, what you've said, making America accountable, and I see people's fists all up. Paul, you had your hand out. Do you want to answer the question?
Yeah, just quickly to Kwasi's question. Thanks for the question. And Marcus and Charles, now you know why they're my favorite professors, you know. So listen, we have studied international experience on truth and reconciliation commissions. I can send you a document that summarizes them all. One of our partners put out a paper that reviewed international history. I have private papers and public papers where people have done that. I do want to just bring your attention to the work of Gail Christopher, and she was the vice president of the Kellogg Foundation. She worked for 10 years. She had a process of working on healing America, and then she had a multi-year process of consultations across the country to create the TRHT framework, which is now the political movement we're part of, to establish a TRHT commission. It's truth, racial healing, and transformation. It's multiracial, it's multicultural. It's centered in the Black experience, but it includes Hispanics, Asian Americans, Native Americans, Pacific Islanders, and white people, because we're the biggest problem here. She did that through a consultative process. So I've been on so many calls and they say, why aren't you calling it Truth and Reconciliation Commission? Well, I just say, well, Gail went through a 3-year process, and that Americans felt like they understood what they did in South Africa, but we have nothing to reconcile. We've never been conciled. So why should we use the word reconciliation? Black people weren't included as humans in our founding constitution, for example, as one small example. So this is not about reconciliation, because we were never reconciled. And it's not about restorative, because we've never been, there's nothing to restore because we've never had something. We've never had racial equity and racial equality. So I just want to say that we have studied and has worked tirelessly to study archives of racial and cultural healing in other countries. We've had calls and meetings with a colleague of hers in the Rwanda Genocide Museum. We are open to all possibilities. We need to learn. Obviously, America has no clue about how to do that. We're studying Berlin, Germany, and how the whole city, you walk in there and you know that these people have accepted the truth and they're working on healing, because they've transformed their whole city, and you can see it and feel it. That's what we're learning on lessons like that.
We have a question from Colleen, because I know she's about to go, from Packard, which is also a question which I had planned to ask in the second session, but really she said thank you for today, but she's more interested to learn more about the arch. So maybe the architect, Dr. Marcus Anthony, can you please tell us about the National Archive of Racial and Cultural Healing?
Yes, no problem. Thank you so much for the question. The idea here was at some point, as Barbara Lee was introducing the resolution, she had approached me and said, you know, we need an accompanying bill. You know, so a resolution is just to resolve something. A bill is something that becomes law. And so when people hear the idea of truth, racial healing, and transformation, it sounds good, but they don't exactly know what that looks like and sounds like, even down to the commission. So I really thought a lot, I really read a lot of different commissions that have happened in the United States and elsewhere, notably the Kerner Commission, the Civil Rights Commission, and others to really figure out what were their mandates, what were some of the possibilities and also limitations, strengths and weaknesses. And one of the major weaknesses in most all commission work is that it becomes kind of a closed door proceeding that nobody ever really hears about. And then all they really do is produce a report. So part of what I did in this was to create a situation where the minute that that commission would be established, it would automatically trigger the beginning of an educational resource. At first premised on making transparent the proceedings of the commission, but then two, creating an opportunity to create a landscape that authorizes what would become a digital repository of accountability. So think about it as a digital library that's available for everyone, K to 12, we're talking about, as Ann mentioned earlier, journalists. As Prophet mentioned earlier, we have music artists, producers, all sorts of people who want to know information about what's going on. Tulsa's a really good example right now. A lot of us know what's happening, but we don't know, can't see what they're up to. So the idea is to really build out something that is a digital library that allows us to document things that are happening in real time, also to go back and digitize records like slave manumission records. Charles and I talk about this a lot. They're currently deteriorating in the Library of Congress. To digitize those records, to make those available, and then also add a community-driven element as well, where we're able to help communities who have lost loved ones during this pandemic, for example, digitize those records in collaboration with their local college, high school, or university in exchange for adding that to a battery of information to help us understand what is going on. Lastly, but not leastly, it's called an arch because we know architecturally, arches create integrity in the structure. Without an arch, it can't stand up. The second thing is that it's racial and cultural healing to account for the fact that across the United States and most importantly across the globe, the dynamic of the racial geography isn't always black and white. It isn't always black and Latino. It may be all white. So we want to have an experience where if you're in Appalachia and you're white, you're able to assess class differentials that make a clear difference in experience in Appalachia. So you have a cultural healing that can happen in addition to a racial healing. So what we're trying to do is partner with as many universities and colleges, with the American research libraries, to really create a digital warehousing where it has a way that you can search a searchable index that allows you to say in your classrooms, I was a high school teacher before I became a college professor. I taught English and they asked about like the Salem witch trials or whatever like that. I wanted to be able to take them somewhere where they can look up what were Black people doing, when the Pilgrims came? Something that you can go to, and also something that allows us to hold our elected officials and economists, the Federal Reserve that makes policies based on assumptions about what our condition is, make them accountable. Well, did you go to the Arch to get your information? Because the Arch would have told you that this is what, Atlanta needs, not what you just said. So also to create something that makes people accountable for the policies that they're making, and also makes it so that we're accountable as Americans for our shared history. Because again, as I started earlier on, America is a collection of stories. Some have been allowed to thrive and others have been suppressed. That suppression is a disservice to us all. We need every story represented, because ultimately, when you look at January 6th, many people see scary white people, definitely, that's the case. What I also see is pain, suffering, and a need for a great healing to come upon all of us. So it's really about incentivizing that. And we are in a fortunate place where, because our elected officials are slow to move, in the first time in a long time, an educational resource can be in the driver's seat of our freedom, of our healing, and of our transformation. And I think we ought to seize that moment.
Thank you. Thank you very much. So I don't know if we have more questions. Paul, you had something to say?
Yeah,
yes.
Just building on that, on the arch, I want to make sure that Harlan, so again, the concept of archives for racial and cultural healing is something that is essential for the vision of truth and racial healing and transformation, the narrative change campaigns that need to emerge from this archived information. And also from testimonials from people that still have memories of lynchings and other crimes against people of color that have happened in this century or last century. You know, there's a lot of uses of the archives from the kind of operational, you know, kind of implementation zone that we're moving into. We are in dialogue with parts of the federal government, including the NARA, which is the National Archives and Records Administration. We're talking with the National Endowment of Humanities. We're talking with ILMS. ILMS wants to have a national conference on TRHT and ARCH in 2022. So we would love to partner with all of you to create that possibility. We're talking with the Association of Research Libraries. That's all really great, but I want to say the most exciting thing to me is the work that Humanity United is supporting with Dr. Chavis in Salisbury, Maryland, because what they're doing there is we're establishing a local community truth, racial healing and transformation commission, and a local ARCH. And it's involving a local HBCU, Eastern Shore, I forget the full name, and a predominantly white institution, Salisbury College, which both have different warehouses full of stuff that no one can see because it's in boxes deteriorating, and we want to digitize it and make it available. So operationally, this is hitting the ground, and at the national level, it's popping, and we're in the window of opportunity. The more that we can do in 2022 to bring this to light, to show people that it's happening, that will create the enabling conditions for President Biden and Vice President Harris to create this as a win-win for them on January 16th, 2023.
And if I can add, Maria, all of this work over the past year and a half has been done pro bono. You know, Paul, Dr. Marcus, and Dr. Charles, myself, we don't receive a dime for this work. And so I think that's very critical. You know, when people talk about how to be actively anti-racist and how do I play my part in today's society, what can I do as a one individual towards moving the needle forward towards racial equity? It is supporting movements like ours. I mean, we are actually on the ground doing the work for real. And there is no cap with us, right? There's no heavy overhead. There is no a bunch of bureaucracy. We're getting real work done here. And we're doing it on the shoestring budget. So imagine if we can duplicate what you guys have done with Dr. Charles, if we can do that across the country. What that then does is allow us to take the power out of waiting for the government to do it. And the regular American people who give a damn can actually do something about it. So that's the power of what Marcus and the team has created with this art. It allows the average person to do their part without waiting for the government.
Yeah. Thank you, Dr. Charles. Yes, Dr.
Yes,
Charles.
thank you. Everyone's been referencing the work that we've been doing in Salisbury, and I wanted to have an opportunity
most
to
definitely
speak to that work. We're calling it at this point the Not Just Tulsa movement, because what we know that indeed Tulsa was a traumatic event that took place in the history of our country. But there are so many other similar incidents and situations that don't get highlighted and documented. And those are a number of things that we want to highlight. Salisbury, Maryland, where we're focusing our proof of concept, this community has, since the racial terror lynchings in the 1930s, has consistently been marginalized and consistently seen the effects of the racial terror that people assumed was ended in the 1930s. And so we actually decided to focus on Salisbury, specifically documenting the lynching, but also interviewing living descendants, as well as those directly connected to the individuals who were lynched. But the main situation that we're focusing on specifically is the Georgetown community. It was a neighborhood in Salisbury, Maryland, the Black neighborhood, very similar to Tulsa, that was systemically dismantled versus being dismantled overnight through traditional policies, some of the policies that you all mentioned, displacement, et cetera. We can go on and on. And what's really powerful about this community, I spent a lot of time in the community working with local activists. The majority of those who were a part of this community where the lynching took place, consistent with what we know about the Great Migration, most of the families escaped the terror, going north, changing their names. We've been able to identify the descendants and relatives, and I'll ask that Maria Shawari Dunn features PBS NewsHour featured our work in Salisbury, documenting our work with these communities. And our goal is to utilize ARCH, the concept and the work of Breathe With Me, to rebuild and restore what was known as the Georgetown community, this Black community that was dismantled. And just to give you an idea of what Georgetown was and where we're at now. So during the lynching, prior to the lynching, there was around 19 Black businesses, numerous property owners, Black physicians, and the like in this community. To this day, there's only one building that remains of Georgetown, and that is the Charles Chipman Cultural Center, or the Methodist Church, in which both lynching victims attended. That is the only building that remains. Even the Black Cemetery of Georgetown was destroyed. The bodies were exhumed to make way for highway advancement, and families to this day have no clue where their loved ones are. We talk about systemic racism and the outcomes. The juvenile incarceration rate in Wacomico County, Salisbury, Maryland, is higher per capita than that of Baltimore City. There, historically, since the lynching, there have been a numerous amount of DOJ investigations into the police department, into the departments of corrections. There's so many issues there, even the systemic poverty, all of those businesses that were once prominent in Salisbury. There are no Black businesses specifically in Salisbury. And there are limitations and loopholes that prevent Black businesses from obtaining the necessary license. And all of this is directly connected. And to close this out, we would not know any of the injustices, right, in regards to the systemic work that had to be done regarding continuing to mistreat this community without the research, without getting access to those records. And because of that, we know that there was a clear-cut plan laid out to systemically oppress, target this community in the same way that Tulsa was targeted, but in a more sophisticated way post-Tulsa that was more systemic, that could be more long-lasting, right? And so with that evidence, we're working with the coalitions as well as the local archives and communities who literally, the Charles Chipman Cultural Center is a cultural institution, the only building that remains of that destroyed community. They have records, they have materials that are deteriorating, as is the building, the only building that remains. And our goal is to work with them, use the funds and resources to support them, and work with HBCUs and PWIs within the Eastern Shore community to preserve these records, but also to work towards transformative justice based on the truth, which is being uncovered as we speak. So I just wanted to make sure we talked about the community that I'm working with. They are, as you can see, fuel me and drive me. So thank you so much, Maria.
Thank you so much, Dr. Charles. We really appreciate you talking about the great work that you're doing in Salisbury, Maryland. The questions have been amazing. The audience, you have asked the questions I wanted to ask in the second half, but they've really been amazing. So I'm going to go on and ask Melanie. Melanie, our Managing Director, Peacebuilding Portfolio HU, has a question. Melanie, do you want to ask it?
Yes, thank you all so much. I am just so moved and inspired by this work, and feel this is so central to peace building and the way that you're thinking about an organic process that also is meeting with the national level in Congress and eventually a rollout on Martin Luther King Day in 2023. Just amazing. So thank you. I have a couple of questions. I'm really concerned about the competing narratives in the US. One is around what's happening at local school boards, where there is such an antipathy to critical race theory, which is tied, of course, so much into the true experience in this country. But then I think there's another one, which I've seen from some government actors and who are maybe exploiting the idea of healing this very superficial way of, oh, this is our time to heal. We'll just come together and talk across divides, and this is the way that we'll heal. So the kind of comparative definitions of healing. I'm also wondering how are you all keeping yourselves healthy? So thinking about kind of how you're managing trauma in your own lives is very emotional work. And then within the local Truth, Racial Healing and Transformation programs, the idea of how participants could be re-traumatized. So what is a kind of trauma-sensitive approach? And then finally wondered if you're working at all with the International Storytelling Center in Jonesboro, Tennessee, which has done really wonderful work at the intersection of social justice and peace building, and really are tapped into deep storytelling networks around the country and the world. Thank you all so much.
Great questions, Melanie. My great panelists, please, the floor is yours. Who would want to take these questions from Melanie? Dr. Charles?
Yes, I can specifically speak to the trauma piece since I'm doing and how this affects me, right? So I'm, as vice chair of the Maryland Lynching Truth and Reconciliation Commission, I have, my therapist has been very busy getting their money's worth on a weekly basis, sometimes twice a week, because being directly connected to the African diaspora and these experiences, it has indeed been traumatic. And I think for us, even as our commission, what we've been able to do, we've prioritized and partnered with clinical social workers who will be in attendance at all of our public hearings, but also they'll provide services to the families throughout the entire process. And they are actually working with us to develop hearing questions as well as to support the local communities. We have to center well-being within this process, and we do not want to re-traumatize. And that's why it's very important when we talk about the process and all of this work that we're doing, that those who are directly connected, we have their blessings and their support before we move forward with anything. That is essential for me, especially someone who's worked with descendants of racial terror who are, working through this, oftentimes had no clue about their ancestor. Like they need time to process it, and we need those communities, we need their blessings to move forward. And it's very important that we center well-being in this work, and we model that as well. And so hopefully that'll answer your question. But in regards to the one question, but in regards to storytelling, it's interesting that you brought that up. Our current chair, Dr. David Fakunle, is the upcoming president of the National Black Storytellers Association. And so storytelling is rooted in a lot of the work that we're doing in terms of how we're developing our hearings. The first hearing was rather formal because it was really how the local coalition wanted it to be designed, the local community. But in working with other communities, preparing for their hearings and preparing to engage them in this work, we allow for more creative perspectives and the arts to be implemented within the hearings that we're doing. And we want to really model this as well with how we approach and look to build the arch, working again with the communities, focusing on a human-centered, community-centered design as we build this out. It makes the work a little more difficult, but it will be so much more meaningful and sustainable in the long run.
Paul, Dr. Paul, you had something? Yes.
So I want to respond to Melanie's personal question about how I, kind of stay healthy, stay balanced, and work on this issue and other issues that are, so this is puppy therapy, this is Sky Joy Zeitz. But I wanted to go further and say, as Prophet mentioned, this is like, this is all emerging from all of us as with love, mainly. There hasn't been cash. It's been the love that has generated everything that we've been sharing with you. And I think one aspect of this that is kind of extraordinary in my own experience is that the six of us are, soul sisters, we support each other. We're each leaders in our own zones, and we don't have a hierarchical kind of structure. We have a leadership team. We're all on it: Lee, Ann, Marcus, Charles, Prophet, and me. So is that six? And, things get rough sometimes. I can be honest about that, even yesterday. And, we we come together and we support each other, you know, Marcus and I, Ann and I, Charles and I, Prophet and I, you know, Lee and I, you know, we have to be there for each other. In terms of the movement, my paid work, this is my unpaid kind of contribution, but I'm working on a global movement to end sexual violence against children and adolescents, which is trauma-centered issues. So we have a whole track of work on self-care and healing journey work, which, you know, there's a difference between the truth-telling stuff that has already happened in the past and the political process of a truth commission, right? Because the cameras are rolling, it's more public profile. So it has to be developed in a way that is not re-traumatizing, that's managed with self-care, where there are trained psychologists available on site, you know, or on a Zoom room. We do this all the time in the sexual violence movement. And also that all the communications that we put out and all the programming that we put out, the narrative change campaigns are carefully monitored so that nothing is re-triggering. And we're talking about, and then, you know, Gail Christopher can tell you lots more about healing circles than I can. But, you know, it's creating, and this is already happening, like in Charlotte, North Carolina, they're doing hearings, they're doing testimonials. They have, you know, witnesses who have been affected by systemic racism. Then they have witnesses who were perpetrators of systemic racism. So, and I mean, literally everyone in the room is crying. I mean, including me on the Zoom room. So it is an emotional healing experience. And so we have to build in a whole track of work on self-care and healing journey support. We're not going to be the therapist for everyone, but we have to make those resources available. The Me Too movement is creating a survivors sanctuary, which is a whole set of online tools. So we could have a healing sanctuary or whatever you want to call it, you know, with all those tools that are available as this goes to scale. Like we could do that yesterday. And also we're studying a lot of interesting work on healing collective trauma. You know, this is like not a, you know, I have my own trauma, everyone has their own trauma, the whole country is traumatized. I like the point Marcus made about the January 6th people, because I actually have the same, we haven't discussed this, but I looked at those people and they were like, these people are PTSD out the wazoo, you know, so there is a healing opportunity across the country, and there is healing of collective trauma that is possible. You know, it's like there's a whole book about it. You know, there was a big conference about it. It's not like I'm not making this stuff up. So this stuff is ready to roll out at scale, and we're ready to be part of that as part of the healing journey here in the United States, so that we can actually, you know, kind of fulfill on the idea of America, which is quite elusive, as we know. The critical race theory and January 6th and Trumpian, the Trump phenomena, all that, to me, is the kind of signals that this is go time. You know, the level of anti-truth is like the force that is creating the possibility that all of us on this Zoom room and all the other Zoom rooms that we're on are going to say, you know what, we got to do this now. This is not like, we don't want your funding for 2023. We do, I shouldn't say that, but we want you to join us on our campaign, which is January 16th, 2023. So it's what we do today, tomorrow. We have 435 days until January 16th, 2023. And then we can have a conference, Maria can host it, you know, the day after, you know, January 17th, and discuss what we do then. You know, but I think right now I'm inviting us all to really laser focus on Martin Luther King Day, January 16th, 2023, as our moment, our win, our victory.
Thank you so much, Dr. Paul. A lot of my questions have really been answered from this great audience that have asked so many of these questions I had planned to ask. So what I'll do is, Anne, you have your hand up, and once, because of time, once Anne, you speak, then we'll have all of you panelists to give us your last message or your last words, and then we can close the session.
Great. Well, this might be my last words as well. I feel like it might be helpful to recap because we've covered a lot of territory. Again, we are a team with years of experience in, as you can see, multiple disciplines. While Breathe With Me came around in June of 2020, we're bringing years of experience and years of accountability. I was on your side prior to this at the Annenberg Foundation, you know, vetting grants and vetting organizations and giving away tens of millions of dollars and tracking that and tracking the impact. So we've done that both in sort of a private capacity and in a very public capacity with celebrities, where there can be no room for error, there can be no controversy. So we bring, as the group has mentioned, we've self-funded this thus far because we believe in this and there really wasn't time. We just wanted to get moving, but we're bringing, you know, our hard work, our accountability. We're now ready to move, like we're really ready to move on this. And just to summarize, you've heard a lot about our movement building that leads to policy change. You've heard about our narrative change. You've seen some of it, both with what would be media and also the arch. And the third piece that we point to, because as we all know, oftentimes people get very passionate, they're very excited, and they don't know what to do next. They would like to be an ally, they would like to support, they're not sure what to do. While we wait for systems to change and while we wait for government to change, we have direct economic justice work that we would like to do in every city in America that, you know, tackles poverty, that tackles all these things while we wait. So we're sort of coming at this with all of those pieces. And would be thrilled to speak with anyone around any of those topics. So thank you for your time. That was just a quick summary so you could get all the madness into one spot.
Thank you. Thank you so much, Anne. Dr. Marcus, any last words?
Sure. First, just tremendous gratitude for the space and place and for the opening of folks' consciousness and heart for what we're doing. I repeat this oftentimes in my classrooms, but the Spirit came to me many years ago and delivered a message that I say all the time that is important for us in this moment, and that is each of us needs all of us. And unfortunately, systemic racism has convinced many people that many of us are expendable. And that is our unfortunate reality. That is the truth of the matter. Just because something is the truth doesn't mean it has to stay the truth. And I think the work that we're doing at Breathe With Me with the help of Humanity United is about exposing the truth, not so that we can just be in pain and suffering because of the horror and terror of that truth, so that we can actually begin again, so that we can actually discover new truths that we can live in together with the mindset that each of us need all of us. I really appreciate everyone's time. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much. Prophet, any last words? Oh, is Prophet there or he left?
I think he's gone.
Oh dear. Okay.
Oh dear.
Dr. Charles.
Yes, I just want to echo everyone else's sentiments. I want to thank everyone who joined us for this call. You know, I had to take 2 days off because over the weekend I spent the entire weekend with a small community in Allegheny County, Maryland, who are grappling with the legacy of racial terror, walking in cemeteries on the side of mountains, and working and witnessing poverty in Black communities. You know, was something for me, working with those people and walking with them. They thanked me at the end of our hearing and asked if I could stay for a few hours, and I said I'll stay until Monday, and and they literally took me and wanted me to see and acknowledge the trauma and acknowledge the history that they have been telling people for so many years regarding their families. And this is just one community. I am inspired by those experiences and the work that I'm doing with communities throughout Maryland. I want to be able to bring this to communities throughout this country. And I feel like Breathe With Me is that vehicle. And if you all will partner with us, we can begin to help communities heal and transform. Thank you again, everyone.
Thank you so much. Dr. Paul?
Thank you, Maria. It's been an amazing opportunity to connect with your community here at Humanity United and the broader philanthropic community. You know, I'm just standing for the possibility that we can join forces at this critical moment in our history of our country. I do think that the kind of democratic approach to governing is at stake here in the United States and around the world. That's not an exaggeration. And I think what we all do together will actually have a causal influence on how this history unfolds. So this is a lovely, fun time, and the stakes couldn't be higher in my estimation. And I really appreciate all the questions and all the opportunity. And I feel really humbled to have this opportunity to work with these amazing people and with all of you on bringing this vision of the idea that America could really become a place where life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness really is true for all.
Yeah.
So we're not there, but we could get there.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Thank you so much from my end and also from Humanity United. And we are so humbled and honored to work with you all. We appreciate the great work that you are doing, and we will continue this partnership, and we see how we can grow this partnership together. I will now pass on the microphone to Anne to close us out on the next steps of the follow-up actions of,
Let me unmute. Yes, I gave my recap as my closing statement. So you have that. We are, obviously anyone that we are looking for partnership. We are looking for advisors. We're obviously looking for funding. We can schedule, one-on-one calls. We have a lot of materials we can take through. As discussed, there are different, approaches and different levels of attack that we're attacking systemic racism with. So there might be certain areas of interest that we've discussed today that if you want to have follow-up on, we can get together around that. We'd love to give you more. Unfortunately, there's more information than was even on the call today. So please reach out, and we'd love to connect with anyone. And we really appreciate each of you today.
Thank you. Vijay is supposed to come in and say bye. Thank you, everyone.
Thank you. Thanks, Maria, for the direction as always. We appreciate your time, Maria. You probably should take a hand to congratulate you too for all the work you put into this. Absolutely. And Betel, who's wisely stayed off camera. So thank you all. We appreciate you joining. Thanks to the Breathe With Me Revolution team. We're going to be in touch with you. So we expect this to be the beginning of many conversations. So thanks again, everyone. Have a good rest of your week.
Lovely.